Humans are naked. Not in the cultural sense, though that too, but in the most fundamental biological way. Among our mammalian cousins, we stand conspicuously bare, our skin exposed to the elements in a way that defies evolutionary logic. Tonight, we explore one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of human evolution, the strange case of the naked ape. Look at your arm for a moment. Notice how, despite the fine, nearly invisible hairs, your skin is essentially exposed. Now consider your dog, your cat, or the squirrels in your local park. Every mammal on Earth, save for a handful of specialized exceptions, wears a permanent coat designed by millions of years of natural selection. Yet here we are, bizarrely bare. This peculiarity has troubled scientists since Darwin. The father of evolution himself considered our hairlessness inexplicable, a deviation. With no clear advantage in the grand scheme of natural selection, why would a primate species evolving on the sun-baked African savanna shed its protective fur? What possible advantage could outweigh the obvious costs of sunburn, temperature vulnerability, and exposure? More puzzling still is the timing. Recent genetic studies suggest we lost our body hair around 2 million years ago, long before we developed clothing or reliable shelter. This means our ancestors spent perhaps 1 million years or more exposed to the elements. Without the technological buffer we now take for granted, how did they survive? Why did they change? The rabbit hole goes deeper. If you look closely at human skin, you'll find we still have roughly the same number of hair follicles as a chimpanzee. Our fur didn't disappear, it simply miniaturized. This distinction matters. Whatever force drove us to nakedness wasn't eliminating hair genes, but rather selecting for microscopic adjustments in how those genes express themselves across our bodies. And yet, we retained thick hair on very specific body parts, our heads, the male face, and our genital regions. Whatever evolutionary pressure stripped us of body fur deemed these patches worth keeping. Our hairlessness stands in stark contrast to every evolutionary rule. Mammals that lose fur typically develop alternative protections: thick skin, blubber, scales, or aquatic lifestyles. Humans developed none of these. Instead, we evolved the most elaborate sweating system of any mammal. Millions of eccrine glands covering our bodies that require exposed skin to function effectively. This leads us to a provocative question. Was heat regulation so crucial to early humans that it justified the extraordinary vulnerability of nakedness? And if so, what were our ancestors doing that generated such heat? The theories attempting to explain human hairlessness range from the plausible to the bizarre. Some suggest we passed through an aquatic phase, a controversial idea known as the aquatic ape hypothesis. Others propose that nakedness evolved as sexual selection, that our ancestors simply found less hairy mates more attractive. Some even suggest parasites drove the change, with less hair meaning fewer hiding places for lice and ticks. Each theory has compelling elements, yet none fully resolves the paradox. How did a vulnerable naked ape survive long enough to develop compensatory technologies like clothing and shelter? The mystery deepens when we consider the precise timing. Genetic studies of human lice offer startling clues. Head lice and pubic lice are different species with different evolutionary histories. The divergence of these parasites suggests humans were naked enough to require pubic hair as a distinct ecological zone approximately 2 million years ago, exactly when genetic evidence suggests we lost our fur. As night falls on the African savanna, imagine our ancestors, newly naked, vulnerable to predators, susceptible to temperature fluctuations, huddled together under the vast canopy of stars. What drove them to this precarious evolutionary experiment? What advantage was worth such extraordinary risk? And how does this ancient adaptation continue to shape our modern lives? In this documentary, we'll examine competing theories, weigh evidence across disciplines, and attempt to solve one of evolution's most persistent mysteries, the case of the naked ape. We'll travel from the fossil beds of East Africa to the laboratories of modern geneticists, from the computer models of evolutionary biologists to the cultural artifacts of human civilization. At stake is not just a curious evolutionary tangent, but a fundamental insight into what made us human. Our hairlessness may be the thread that, once pulled, unravels the entire tapestry of human uniqueness. Join me as we explore how humans lost their fur, and in doing so, perhaps gained their humanity. Chapter 2: The Evolutionary Outlier. Stand before a mirror and truly see yourself as you are, a primate with a peculiar condition, nearly hairless, save for strategic patches. Pink, vulnerable skin stretched over a frame designed for endurance rather than strength. You are a walking evolutionary puzzle. From a strictly Darwinian perspective, your nakedness makes little immediate sense. Natural selection typically favors protection, not vulnerability. Yet here you stand, the dominant species on planet Earth, having conquered every environment from equatorial jungles to Arctic tundra, all while lacking the fundamental protection that defines your taxonomic class. The stakes of this mystery extend far beyond biological curiosity. Understanding why humans lost their fur likely means understanding what made us human in the first place. Our nakedness appears to have emerged around the same time as several other distinctly human traits. Our enlarged brains, our bipedal stance, our tool use, and possibly even our complex social structures. These timing correlations suggest a profound interconnection. What if our hairlessness wasn't merely a side effect of evolution, but a driving force behind human exceptionalism? Consider the extraordinary metabolic cost of our oversized brains. The human brain consumes approximately 20% of our body's energy, while representing only 2% of our body mass. This energy-hungry organ generates tremendous heat. In a fur-covered primate, the risk of overheating would increase dramatically, potentially limiting cognitive development. Could nakedness have been the price of intelligence? Or perhaps the causal arrow points in the opposite direction. Maybe our ancestors' increasingly sophisticated behaviors, persistence, hunting, complex social organization, tool creation generated selection pressures favoring heat regulation over fur. Either way, the connection between our naked skin and our oversized brains may represent one of evolution's most consequential trade-offs: vulnerability for intellect. The mystery deepens when we consider the global distribution of human skin color. If we lost our fur primarily for thermoregulation, why did humans develop such dramatically different skin pigmentations? The answer involves another trade-off: vitamin D synthesis versus ultraviolet protection. Without fur's protective shield, our skin became our primary interface with solar radiation. Darker skin protected against harmful UV rays in tropical regions, while lighter skin allowed for crucial vitamin D production in less sunny northern latitudes. Our nakedness thus catalyzed one of humanity's most visible forms of adaptation. This connection reveals another layer of the mystery's importance. Understanding human hairlessness helps explain not just our evolutionary past, but the very diversity of human appearances that has shaped our cultural histories. Perhaps most intriguing are the social consequences of our nakedness. Without fur as visual camouflage, humans became uniquely exposed to one another, physically and emotionally. Blushing, for instance, is a distinctly human trait. Our hairless faces reveal emotional states through blood flow changes, creating an involuntary signaling system that facilitates complex social interactions. Similarly, our exposed skin became a canvas for cultural expression. From tattooing and scarification to body painting and clothing, humans have transformed their nakedness into powerful systems of identity and communication. Could social transparency have been the ultimate evolutionary advantage of hairlessness? Did our ancestors trade physical protection for social connection, developing unprecedented levels of cooperation and trust? The implications extend even further when we consider modern human behavior. Our peculiar obsession with clothing transcends mere protection. It has become central to identity, status, and self-expression. Our multi-billion-dollar beauty industry largely focuses on skin, the very organ that our evolutionary history left exposed. We moisturize, exfoliate, tan, and adorn the same vulnerable surface that our ancestors somehow deemed worth uncovering. Even our sexual attraction patterns show the lingering influence of our naked past. Unlike most mammals, humans display persistent sexual interest, not limited to fertility cycles, a trait potentially connected to the continuous visual cues provided by hairless bodies. Understanding why we lost our fur may provide crucial context for these fundamental aspects of human behavior and psychology. Our nakedness may have shaped not just our bodies, but our minds. The mystery also connects to ongoing debates about human uniqueness. Are we fundamentally different from other animals, or merely one expression on the continuum of evolutionary possibilities? Our hairlessness represents one of the clearest physical manifestations of human exceptionalism, a trait shared by no other terrestrial mammal except through artificial selection, like hairless dog breeds or specific environmental adaptations. Yet this exceptionalism came at considerable cost. Without fur, early humans faced increased risk of skin cancer, parasitic infection, abrasions, sunburn, decay, and temperature-related stress, all without modern medicine or protective technology. The evolutionary mathematics must have been compelling indeed. Whatever advantage nakedness conferred, it outweighed these substantial risks for generation after generation of our ancestors. This cost-benefit analysis frames our central question: what advantage was worth the price of vulnerability? What evolutionary pressure was so powerful that it stripped away our ancestral protection? As we explore competing theories, we must evaluate them against this fundamental criterion. Any viable explanation must account for both the timing and the magnitude of the evolutionary gamble. The mystery of human hairlessness is not merely an academic puzzle. It's a window into the very forces that shaped our species' unique evolutionary trajectory. By understanding why we lost our fur, we may gain profound insights into why we developed language, art, technology, and the complex social structures that define humanity. Chapter 3. The Dawn of Nakedness, to understand when and why humans lost their fur. We must first journey back to meet our closest living relatives, the great apes. Chimpanzees, with whom we share approximately 98.8% of our DNA, remain fully furred. Their bodies are covered in thick black hair that provides protection from sun, insects, minor abrasions, and temperature fluctuations. Gorillas, bonobos, and orangutans tell the same story. Despite millions of years of separate evolution, all retain their mammalian birthright, a protective coat of fur appropriate to their environments. This comparison establishes our first important timeline marker. Whatever prompted human hairlessness must have occurred after our evolutionary split from chimpanzees, estimated at 6 to 7 million years ago. The fossil record offers tantalizingly incomplete evidence. While bones preserve across millennia, soft tissues like skin and hair rarely survive. We cannot directly examine the pelts of our evolutionary ancestors. Instead, scientists look for indirect evidence. Certain anatomical features correlate with hairlessness across species, particularly the density and distribution of sweat glands. Eccrine glands, the type of sweat gland that covers human bodies, function most effectively on bare skin. Their presence in fossil species may indicate the beginnings of our naked adaptation. The earliest human ancestor showing evidence of significant eccrine gland development appears to be Homo erectus, who emerged approximately 2 million years ago. This species represents a pivotal transition in human evolution. Homo erectus was the first hominin to disperse beyond Africa, reaching as far as Southeast Asia and potentially Europe. Their bodies show numerous adaptations for heat management: tall, slender frames that maximize surface area relative to volume, longer limbs, and evidence of the distinctive striding gait that defines modern humans. These adaptations collectively suggest a species highly adapted to hot environments, potentially engaging in sustained activity under direct sun conditions where fur would become a liability rather than an asset. Genetic evidence corroborates this timeline. By analyzing mutations in genes controlling hair development, scientists estimate humans began losing body hair approximately 2 million years ago. Fascinatingly, this corresponds precisely with the emergence of Homo erectus, suggesting that hairlessness may have been one of this species' defining adaptations. The timing reveals another crucial clue. Modern humans didn't develop tailored clothing until approximately 70,000 years ago, as evidenced by the first appearance of bone needles in the archaeological record. This creates a stunning chronological gap, nearly 2 million years during which our ancestors were both hairless and without adequate technological compensation. How did they survive this vulnerability? Climate reconstructions offer context. 2 million years ago, Africa was experiencing dramatic environmental shifts, becoming progressively drier and hotter as forests gave way to expansive savannas. These open grasslands presented both opportunity and challenge. Rich in prey animals, but sparse in shade, they rewarded endurance and heat management while punishing those who overheated during physical exertion. The savanna hypothesis suggests that fur became a liability in this environment, particularly for a species increasingly reliant on persistence hunting, the practice of pursuing prey to exhaustion. Unlike ambush predators who rely on short bursts of speed, persistence hunters track animals for hours across open terrain, capitalizing on superior thermoregulation to outlast their prey. While most mammals cool primarily through panting, humans employ a unique whole-body sweating system that, when unimpeded by fur, creates extraordinarily efficient evaporative cooling. A naked, sweating human can sustain activity and heat that would cause fatal hyperthermia in most mammals. This adaptation would prove decisive on the savanna, allowing our ancestors to hunt during the hottest parts of the day. The fossil record shows another significant change during this period: dramatic encephalization or brain growth. Homo erectus had a cranial capacity approximately 80% larger than earlier Australopithecines. Larger brains generate more heat, creating another potential pressure favoring enhanced cooling mechanisms. The correlation between increasing brain size and decreasing body hair may be no coincidence, but competition for the why of human hairlessness extends beyond hunting and brains. Some researchers point to sexual selection, the possibility that early humans simply preferred less hairy mates. Sexual selection can drive rapid evolutionary change, sometimes producing traits that seem counterproductive from a pure survival perspective. Could our nakedness be an ancient beauty standard made permanent? The aquatic ape hypothesis offers yet another explanation. This controversial theory suggests humans passed through a semi-aquatic phase, during which fur became disadvantageous for swimming and diving. Proponents point to similarities between humans and aquatic mammals: subcutaneous fat layers, streamlined bodies, voluntary breath control, and of course, reduced body hair. While mainstream science has largely rejected this hypothesis, it highlights the diversity of potential explanations for our unusual morphology. Parasites present another compelling theory. Fur provides habitat for lice, ticks, and other ectoparasites that can transmit disease. Reducing hair may have conferred significant health advantages through parasite reduction. The parasite hypothesis gains support from studies of human lice. Genetic analysis reveals head lice and pubic lice are different species with different evolutionary histories, suggesting our bodies were already hairless enough to create distinct ecological niches. Body lice, which live primarily in clothing, appear to have evolved from head lice approximately 170,000 years ago, potentially marking when humans began wearing clothes regularly. This evidence creates a fascinating timeline. We lost most body hair 2 million years ago, retained pubic hair as a distinct environment, and only relatively recently developed the cultural adaptation of clothing. The fire control hypothesis offers yet another perspective. Archaeological evidence suggests controlled use of fire dates back at least 1 million years, with some controversial evidence pushing this boundary even earlier. Fire provides warmth, protection, and cooking capability, potentially offsetting some disadvantages of hairlessness. Could the mastery of flame have facilitated or accelerated our evolutionary disrobing? Chapter 4. The telltale skin, our most compelling evidence for human hairlessness, comes not from what we've lost, but from what remains. Human skin tells a complex evolutionary story if we know how to read it. Microscopically, human skin maintains nearly the same density of hair follicles as our chimpanzee cousins. We haven't lost the structures for growing hair. Our follicles simply produce minuscule vellus hairs rather than thick terminal hairs. This distinction reveals something crucial about the evolutionary process. Our nakedness resulted not from deleted genes, but from altered expression, subtle changes in how those genes operate across the body. The genetic switches controlling hair growth remain largely intact. It's evidenced by the terminal hair that still grows on our heads, faces particularly in males, and pubic regions. These remaining patches of prominent hair offer critical clues. Whatever selective pressure drove body hair reduction clearly exempted these specific areas, suggesting they served essential functions worth preserving. Cranial hair likely provided crucial protection from direct sun exposure for our increasingly large brains. Even today, heat stroke represents a significant risk when the head remains unprotected in hot, sunny conditions. Facial hair in males presents a more complex case. Its pronounced sexual dimorphism, appearing only in males after puberty, suggests a role in sexual selection or signaling rather than pure survival utility. Pubic hair presents perhaps the most intriguing case. Its preservation across both sexes suggests an important function, potentially related to reducing friction during sexual activity or trapping pheromones to enhance mate attraction. Beyond hair distribution, human skin itself provides evidence through its unique structure. Human epidermis contains an unusually high concentration of eccrine sweat glands, between 2 to 5 million across the body. These specialized glands secrete a watery solution of salt and other electrolytes directly onto the skin surface. When this moisture evaporates, it creates a powerful cooling effect, but only if the skin remains exposed to air. Fur dramatically reduces evaporative cooling efficiency. A chimpanzee sweating under its coat would experience minimal temperature reduction, while a sweating human can cool rapidly, even in extreme heat. This adaptation explains why humans can sustain aerobic activity in hot environments that would quickly debilitate other mammals. Our naked, sweating skin functions essentially as a whole-body radiator. The distribution of these sweat glands provides another clue. They appear in highest concentration on our palms, soles, foreheads, and cheeks, areas that remained hairless even in our fully furred ancestors. This suggests the cooling system predated widespread hairlessness, perhaps originally evolving for specific high-exertion activities involving the hands and feet before expanding across the entire body. Human skin also contains specialized neural receptors sensitive to light touch. See tactile afferents that respond pleasurably to gentle stroking at specific speeds. These receptors appear optimized for social grooming and bonding. The pleasure derived from skin-to-skin contact may have provided social advantages that vastly offset the protective disadvantages of hairlessness, reinforcing group cohesion and cooperative behavior. Our skin's pigmentation offers another evolutionary record. The melanin that determines skin color serves dual purposes, protecting deeper layers from harmful UV radiation while allowing sufficient penetration for vitamin D synthesis. As humans migrated from Africa to less sunny environments, selective pressure favored reduced pigmentation. This adaptation occurred only because our skin was directly exposed to sunlight, a consequence of hairlessness. Archaeological evidence provides indirect support for the timing of hair loss. The earliest stone tools date to approximately 2.6 million years ago, correlating roughly with estimates of when humans began losing body hair. This technological development may have reduced selective pressure for maintaining fur by providing alternative means of protection, from animal hide clothing to constructed shelters. Fossil evidence suggests Homo erectus controlled fire by at least 1 million years ago. This crucial technology would have significantly mitigated the thermoregulatory disadvantages of hairlessness, particularly during cold nights. Perhaps most compelling is the evidence from human parasites. Genetic analysis of human lice reveals that body lice, which live primarily in clothing, diverged from head lice approximately 170,000 years ago. This timing suggests humans were naked long before developing regular clothing, supporting the hypothesis that hairlessness evolved for reasons unrelated to cultural or technological adaptations. Further evidence comes from genetic comparisons across populations. The genes governing hair morphology show remarkably low variation globally, suggesting strong selective pressure maintained consistent hair patterns after humans dispersed from Africa. This consistency indicates hairlessness wasn't simply a neutral trait that persisted through genetic drift, but rather an adaptation with significant survival or reproductive advantages across diverse environments. The human preference for smooth skin in many cultures may reflect an evolutionary echo of this ancient selection. Cross-cultural studies show widespread aesthetic preferences for clear, unblemished skin in potential mates. These preferences may perpetuate the very selection pressures that drove hairlessness originally, creating an evolutionary feedback loop between biology and culture. Recent studies of the EDAR gene provide another genetic smoking gun. This gene influences hair thickness, sweat gland density, and teeth formation. A variant common in East Asian populations increases sweat gland density while reducing hair thickness. This correlation supports the connection between hairlessness and sweating capacity, suggesting the traits evolved in tandem rather than independently. Neanderthal genetics offer a comparative perspective. Genome sequencing reveals Neanderthals carried many of the same genetic markers associated with reduced body hair in modern humans. This suggests hair reduction began before the split between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals, approximately 600,000 years ago, consistent with evidence that the process began much earlier with Homo erectus. But perhaps the most tantalizing evidence comes from a controversial source, the aquatic environment. Humans display multiple physiological responses to water that differ markedly from our primate relatives. We instinctively hold our breath when our faces contact water. The mammalian diving reflex and our infants naturally hold their breath and paddle when submerged. These responses mirror those of semi-aquatic mammals. Could these adaptations, combined with our reduced body hair and subcutaneous fat distribution, indicate a phase of human evolution with significant time spent in aquatic environments? The debate intensifies when we consider coastal migration patterns. Evidence suggests early humans followed coastlines during dispersal from Africa, potentially exploiting rich marine food sources. Shellfish and fish provide critical nutrients for brain development, including omega-3 fatty acids and iodine. Could a shift to these food sources have coincided with both brain expansion and hair reduction? As we stand at this crossroads of competing theories, we must confront the profound implications. What if human evolution wasn't driven primarily by adaptations to terrestrial hunting, but by exploitation of aquatic resources? What if our nakedness represents not an adaptation to heat, but to water? What if persistence hunting became possible because of adaptations that evolved for entirely different reasons? The evidence points in multiple directions, creating a genuine scientific mystery. Did we lose our fur to run, to swim, to avoid parasites, or for some combination of factors we've yet to fully understand? And why, after millions of years of successful evolution with fur, did only one primate lineage make this dramatic physiological change? What was unique about our ancestors' circumstances or behaviors? As we continue our exploration, we'll dive deeper into these competing hypotheses, examining the evidence for each and testing their explanatory power against the remarkable anomaly of human hairlessness. The answer may fundamentally reshape our understanding of what made us human and what continues to make us unique among Earth's remarkable diversity of life. Chapter 5: Contradictions in the Naked Timeline. As compelling as our evidence appears, we must now confront the contradictions that make the mystery of human hairlessness so persistent. The narrative we've constructed contains significant anomalies that cannot be easily explained. Consider first the paradox of timing. If hairlessness evolved primarily for thermoregulation during persistence hunting, why did it begin approximately 2 million years ago, long before evidence of systematic hunting strategies? The earliest unambiguous evidence of coordinated hunting practices dates to only about 400,000 years ago. Yet our genetic timeline suggests we'd already been naked for 1.6 million years by then. This presents a significant chronological problem. If we lost fur to run more effectively, why did the adaptation precede the behavior it supposedly evolved to enhance? Equally puzzling is the female factor. Persistence hunting in documented hunter-gatherer societies is almost exclusively practiced by males, yet hairlessness evolved across both sexes simultaneously. For a trait to be selected so strongly in females without direct survival benefit suggests either sexual selection, male preference for less hairy females, or some other selective pressure affecting both sexes equally. The climate record presents another contradiction. While Africa was certainly warming 2 million years ago, the planet was also entering a series of ice ages. Our ancestors would have faced cold nights, even in equatorial regions. Without fur or sophisticated clothing, how did hairless humans survive these temperature drops? Modern unclothed humans begin experiencing hypothermia at ambient temperatures below 70 degrees Fahrenheit, 21 degrees Celsius, temperatures common during African nights. The savanna hypothesis struggles to explain why humans lost fur, while other savanna-adapted mammals retained theirs. Lions, hyenas, jackals all hunt on the same plains where humans evolved, yet maintain full coats. Even more striking is the case of persistence hunters like African wild dogs. These canids pursue prey to exhaustion in the same environment and using the same strategy often attributed to early humans. Yet wild dogs remain fully furred, cooling primarily through panting rather than sweating. If hairlessness were truly essential for persistence hunting in hot environments, why didn't these specialized hunters evolve similar adaptations? The geographic distribution of human populations creates another paradox. If hairlessness evolved for heat dissipation in equatorial Africa, why did humans who migrated to colder regions maintain the trait? Natural selection typically works quickly to restore adaptive traits when pressures change. Yet northern populations remained essentially as hairless as their tropical counterparts, despite radically different thermal challenges. The cold adaptation problem deepens when we consider Neanderthals, who lived primarily in Ice Age Europe. Genetic evidence suggests they shared our hairlessness, despite environments where fur would provide clear survival advantages. This contradiction suggests either that hairlessness served some purpose beyond thermoregulation, or that cultural adaptations like controlled fire and clothing emerged much earlier than current evidence indicates. The parasite hypothesis faces its own contradictions. If reducing parasite load was the primary driver, why did humans lose fur while other social primates equally vulnerable to parasites maintained theirs? Chimpanzees, our closest relatives, engage in extensive social grooming to remove parasites. This behavioral adaptation seemingly solved the parasite problem without requiring the drastic vulnerability of hairlessness. Moreover, fur actually provides protection against certain parasites, particularly biting insects like mosquitoes. By losing our protective coating, we potentially increased vulnerability to insect-borne diseases. The aquatic ape hypothesis, while intriguing, confronts perhaps the most significant contradictions. The fossil record shows a clear trajectory of human evolution in terrestrial environments, not coastal or riverine settings. While modern humans may enjoy swimming, we lack the specialized adaptations of truly semi-aquatic mammals. We have no webbing between fingers, no specialized respiratory adaptations, and we swim far less efficiently than dedicated aquatic species. Additionally, if water adaptation drove our hairlessness, you would expect to see the greatest hair reduction on our backs, the surface exposed while swimming, yet humans retain considerable vellus hair on their backs. Even the sexual selection hypothesis encounters contradictions. If aesthetic preference drove hair reduction, why did similar preferences not emerge in other primate species with complex social structures? And why would such preferences emerge specifically for reduced body hair rather than any of countless other possible physical traits? Sexual selection typically produces elaborate features, not their reduction. The brain cooling hypothesis seems plausible until we consider that many mammals with similar or larger brain-to-body ratios maintain full fur coats. Dolphins, with brains larger than humans relative to body size, evolved specialized vascular structures rather than losing their insulation. Furthermore, if brain cooling were the primary selective pressure, we might expect to see hairlessness concentrated around the head and neck, with fur maintained elsewhere for general insulation. The most perplexing contradiction involves our uniqueness. Whatever pressure drove human hairlessness was apparently strong enough to overcome the substantial costs of vulnerability, yet somehow affected only our lineage. No other terrestrial mammal underwent this dramatic adaptation independently. The other hairless mammals, elephants, rhinos, hippos, naked mole rats evolved their reduced hair for entirely different reasons, under different circumstances. This exclusivity demands explanation. What unique combination of factors affected only the hominin line? What singular path did our ancestors walk that no other terrestrial mammal encountered? The technological explanation that tools, fire, and clothing allowed us to compensate for hairlessness faces its own chronological contradiction. Our best evidence suggests these innovations postdate hair loss by hundreds of thousands of years. Stone tools appear approximately 2.6 million years ago. But the earliest evidence for clothing is far more recent, perhaps only 170,000 years ago. Based on genetic studies of body lice, this creates an enormous gap during which our ancestors were both hairless and technologically unable to fully compensate for that vulnerability, a period spanning over 1 million years. How did they survive this extended period of exposure? What advantages could possibly outweigh such prolonged vulnerability? And why has no other mammalian species made this same evolutionary gamble? These contradictions don't invalidate our theories, but they do complicate them significantly. The story of human hairlessness cannot be explained by any single simple narrative. Instead, these anomalies suggest something more complex, perhaps a unique intersection of multiple selective pressures, or an evolutionary path dependent on a specific sequence of adaptations found only in our lineage. As we continue our exploration, we must hold these contradictions in mind. The most compelling explanation will be the one that resolves not just some, but all of these paradoxes. The mystery deepens, and with it, our understanding of what truly makes humans unique among Earth's remarkable diversity of life. Chapter 6. Whispers from the mythic past beyond scientific evidence lies another realm of clues, the collective memory of our species preserved in myths, legends, and cultural practices. These narratives, while not empirical, offer intriguing perspectives on how humans have understood their own nakedness. Across continents and millennia, human cultures have created origin stories that specifically address our hairless condition. The persistence of this theme suggests an ancient awareness of our biological uniqueness. In the Judeo-Christian tradition, nakedness features prominently in the Garden of Eden narrative. Adam and Eve begin without shame in their unclothed state, becoming aware of their nakedness only after gaining forbidden knowledge. This story contains an implicit recognition that humans differ fundamentally from other animals. Our nakedness requires explanation, and in this tradition, it connects directly to our elevated consciousness and moral awareness. Similar themes appear in ancient Greek mythology. Prometheus, after creating humans from clay, gives them fire specifically because they lack the natural protections of other animals. No claws, no fur, no great speed or strength. This myth recognizes human vulnerability while connecting it directly to our technological compensation. Fire, the first technology, becomes the divine gift that allows naked apes to survive and eventually thrive. Indigenous Australian Dreamtime stories often feature explanations for human attributes, including several that address hairlessness. One common motif involves ancestors losing their fur through contact with fire or water. These narratives suggest an intuitive understanding of the connection between human hairlessness and our relationship with both fire and water elements that feature prominently in scientific hypotheses as well. Chinese mythology includes the tale of Nuwa, who created humans from yellow earth. The first humans lacked fur because they were fashioned from clay rather than born of other animals, a divine design choice. This myth presents hairlessness as intentional rather than adaptive, but still acknowledges it as a defining characteristic that separates humans from other creatures and connects us to our Creator. Perhaps most intriguing are myths from cultures with historical connections to aquatic environments. The Dogon people of Mali maintain traditions describing ancestors who were half fish, half human beings who lived in water. Japanese folklore features the kappa, water-dwelling humanoids with specialized adaptations for aquatic life. Similar water-human hybrid creatures appear in mythologies worldwide, from European selkies to Amazonian river spirits. Could these persistent aquatic humanoid myths preserve some ancestral memory of a time when our species had closer connections to water environments? The question, while speculative, remains provocative. Beyond myths lie cultural practices that suggest ancient awareness of our hairless vulnerability. The universal human tradition of body adornment, from clothing to body paint. Tattoos and scarification may represent compensation for lost natural covering. Archaeological evidence confirms humans have been adorning their bodies for at least 100,000 years. Ochre pigments showing signs of processing have been found at multiple sites, suggesting early humans colored their exposed skin. Shell beads and pierced teeth dating to 75,000 years ago indicate early humans created body ornaments, perhaps the first attempts to culturally replace what evolution had removed biologically. Cross-cultural analysis reveals something remarkable. Societies with minimal clothing often develop the most elaborate body decoration systems. Traditional groups in warm climates frequently adorn their exposed skin with intricate patterns. This inverse relationship between clothing and decoration suggests a deep human need to cover ourselves, not necessarily for protection or modesty, but perhaps to restore the visual complexity lost with our ancestral fur. Medical traditions worldwide contain references to human thermoregulation challenges. Traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, and indigenous healing systems all address the specific vulnerability of humans to environmental temperature fluctuations. These traditions develop sophisticated understanding of how uncovered human bodies respond to heat and cold. Knowledge unnecessary for treating fully furred mammals who rarely experience hypothermia or hyperthermia. Historical linguistics offers another intriguing pathway. Many ancient languages contain specific terminology for human hairlessness, often with connotations of both vulnerability and exceptionalism. The Sanskrit word nagna, naked, shares roots with words for both vulnerability and spiritual purity, suggesting dual awareness of both the practical disadvantages and potential symbolic advantages of hairlessness. Archaeological evidence occasionally provides direct glimpses of how ancient humans understood their naked condition. Cave paintings from multiple continents consistently depict humans with less body hair than companion animals. These artistic representations, some dating back 30,000 years or more, demonstrate awareness of this biological distinction long before scientific understanding of evolution or comparative anatomy. More controversial are potential out of place archaeological findings, artifacts that suggest earlier technological adaptations to hairlessness than mainstream chronologies support. Some researchers point to wear patterns on certain Paleolithic tools that could indicate hide scraping for clothing manufactured dating back 500,000 years, far earlier than generally accepted timelines for clothing development. Similarly disputed are interpretations of certain fossil evidence. Some paleoanthropologists suggest evidence of controlled fire use may extend back 1.5 million years or more, which would better align with genetic estimates of when hairlessness evolved. These contested findings, while not conclusive, highlight the chronological tension between when we lost our fur and when we developed technological compensations. Ethnographic studies of contemporary hunter-gatherers provide another window into potential ancient adaptations. Many traditional societies maintain sophisticated knowledge of natural insect repellents derived from plants. These botanical repellents may represent ancient adaptations to the increased vulnerability to biting insects that accompanied hairlessness, cultural solutions to biological problems. Similarly, traditional shelter construction techniques often emphasize protection from environmental extremes in ways that would specifically benefit hairless primates. Temporary shelters that block sun, wind, or rain appear universally across human cultures. These consistent cultural adaptations suggest long coevolution between our biological hairlessness and technological compensations, potentially spanning far longer than archaeological evidence directly confirms. The field of comparative mythology reveals striking parallels between hair loss narratives across unconnected cultures. Creation myths from Africa, Australia, the Americas, and Eurasia frequently featured transformational events where previously furred beings become human through hair loss. This cross-cultural pattern suggests either a universal psychological understanding of hairlessness as fundamentally human, or perhaps preservation of ancestral memory from before human geographic dispersal. Recent ethnographic work with traditional societies reveals nuanced cultural understandings of human thermoregulation. Many indigenous groups maintain sophisticated knowledge of how to manage body temperature through behavioral rather than technological means. These behavioral adaptations, seeking shade during peak heat, timing activities to avoid thermal stress, utilizing natural water features for cooling, may represent extremely ancient strategies for coping with hairlessness. The fossil record occasionally yields tantalizing indirect evidence. Certain hominin fossils show anatomical features consistent with enhanced sweating capability, larger nerve foramina that would accommodate the increased neural supply needed for dense eccrine gland distributions. These anatomical hints suggest a physiological adaptation for sweating may have evolved in tandem with hair reduction, supporting the thermoregulation hypothesis, while adding chronological precision. Most intriguing are cross-species comparisons that challenge our assumptions. Certain mammals, notably some bat species, have independently evolved hair reduction patterns remarkably similar to humans, with hair concentrated on the head and reduced on the body. These convergent evolutionary patterns suggest the possibility that similar selective pressures may operate across seemingly different ecological niches, potentially offering clues to our own evolutionary puzzle. As we weave together these threads from myth, archaeology, ethnography, and comparative biology, a more nuanced picture emerges, one suggesting human hairlessness may have resulted from multiple intersecting factors rather than a single adaptive pressure. Chapter 7: The Evolutionary Gamble. We stand now at a critical juncture in our investigation. The evidence and contradictions before us suggest not just a curious biological anomaly, but a profound evolutionary gamble that fundamentally shaped human destiny. The stakes of understanding human hairlessness extend far beyond satisfying scientific curiosity. This trait appears inextricably linked with the very adaptations that define our species, our large brains, our technological capacity, our complex social structures. If we can decipher why humans lost their fur, we may gain unprecedented insight into the unique evolutionary pressures that created the only species on Earth capable of pondering its own origins. The evidence increasingly suggests that hairlessness was not merely an adaptation to a single pressure, but rather a pivotal evolutionary node, a change that catalyzed a cascade of other adaptations that collectively define humanity. Consider the correlation between hair loss and brain expansion. The archaeological and fossil record shows dramatic encephalization occurring roughly in parallel with the genetic timeline for hair reduction. This timing cannot be coincidental. Either hair loss enabled brain growth by solving the critical problem of thermal regulation, or both traits were responding to the same underlying selective pressures. Either way, understanding this connection may reveal fundamental insights about human cognitive evolution. Perhaps it's the greatest remaining mystery in evolutionary biology. The metabolic consequences of hairlessness reshape our understanding of human dietary evolution as well. Without fur's insulation, early humans would have required significantly more calories simply to maintain body temperature. This increased energy demand may have driven dietary innovations, including increased meat consumption, cooking, and eventually agriculture, that further distinguished humans from other primates. Recent research suggests the caloric deficit created by poor insulation could reach 5 to 10% of total energy requirements in cooler environments, a substantial pressure that would necessitate either behavioral or technological compensation. Some paleoanthropologists now suggest hairlessness may have been the trigger for the distinctively human practice of cooking food, a technology that dramatically increases caloric availability from the same food sources. The chronological alignment is suggestive. Genetic evidence places hair loss around 2 million years ago, while some controversial archaeological evidence points to controlled fire use beginning as early as 1.5 million years ago. Could the metabolic pressure created by hairlessness have driven the motivation to master fire? If so, this single adaptation may have indirectly catalyzed the most transformative technology in human evolutionary history. The social implications reach even further. Hairlessness created unprecedented vulnerability for a primate species, potentially driving increased interdependence and cooperation for survival. Without individual protection from the elements, early humans may have been forced to develop more sophisticated social structures, sharing resources, constructing shelters, and coordinating activities to minimize environmental exposure. This necessity for cooperation may have selected for enhanced social cognition, the ability to understand others, mental states, coordinate actions, and form complex social bonds beyond the capacity of other primates. Neurological studies support this connection. The regions of the human brain most expanded relative to other primates are precisely those involved in social cognition and cooperation. If hairlessness drove enhanced social cooperation, which in turn selected for expanded social cognition areas in the brain, we face a remarkable conclusion. Our naked skin may have indirectly shaped our minds. The communication implications are equally profound. Human skin, unlike that of other primates, visibly displays emotional states through blushing, blanching, and subtle color changes invisible beneath fur. This involuntary signaling system creates transparency in social interactions, potentially enhancing trust and cooperation in ways impossible for fully furred species. Studies of human nonverbal communication confirm we extract significant social information from skin tones and subtle color shifts, information unavailable to other primates whose skin remains hidden beneath fur. From this perspective, hairlessness may represent not just an adaptation for thermoregulation, but the biological foundation for uniquely human levels of emotional communication and social cohesion. The reproductive consequences demand equal consideration. Unlike most mammals, humans maintain continuous sexual interest rather than limited reproductive cycles, a trait potentially connected to the constant visual cues provided by hairless bodies. This shift from seasonal to continuous mating patterns would have profound implications for pair bonding, parental investment, and ultimately the development of family structures unique among primates. Anthropological evidence supports this connection. Human societies universally develop more elaborate long-term pair bonds than our closest primate relatives, potentially an adaptation that evolved in tandem with or as a consequence of hairlessness. The energetic costs of raising slow-developing, large-brained offspring may have been sustainable only through increased male parental investment, a pattern potentially facilitated by the visual sexual signaling enabled by hairlessness. The technological implications extend our understanding even further. The vulnerability created by hairlessness would have created immediate selective pressure for technological compensations, beginning with simple tools and shelters. This pressure for technological innovation may have created a self-reinforcing cycle. Hairlessness drove technology development, which enabled further adaptation to new environments, which selected for enhanced cognitive capacity. Recent computational models support this hypothesis. When vulnerability parameters are increased in evolutionary simulations, selection for tool use and social cooperation increases dramatically, precisely the pattern observed in human evolution. If correct, this suggests human technological capacity, perhaps our most defining characteristic, may have roots in the vulnerability created by our unusual lack of body fur. The geographic implications reshape our understanding of human migration patterns. Without the insulation provided by fur, early humans would face significant challenges adapting to colder environments. Yet the archaeological record shows humans successfully migrated into Europe and Northern Asia long before the development of sophisticated clothing technology. How did they manage this expansion? Recent climate modeling integrated with human physiology suggests controlled use of fire would have been absolutely essential for hairless hominins in these environments, not optional, but necessary for survival. This necessity may explain why evidence of fire control appears earliest and most consistently in archaeological sites at the northern edges of early human expansion. The mortality implications are perhaps most sobering. Conservative estimates suggest hairlessness would have increased vulnerability to environmental stressors enough to raise mortality rates by 10 to 15% in the absence of technological compensation. This represents an extraordinary selective disadvantage, one that could be justified only by an even more substantial adaptive advantage. What benefit was worth this survival cost? The answer may lie in composite advantage, not one benefit, but the synergistic combination of multiple benefits that collectively outweighed the substantial costs of vulnerability. Thermoregulation during high-intensity activity, parasite reduction, enhanced social communication, sexual selection, and potential aquatic foraging advantages may have combined to create cumulative benefits exceeding the costs. This composite hypothesis represents our most sophisticated understanding that human hairlessness resulted not from a single adaptive pressure, but from a unique evolutionary perfect storm. Correct? This explains both why the adaptation proved so valuable for humans and why no other terrestrial mammal has independently evolved the same trait. The specific combination of pressures was unique to our lineage. The ultimate stake in understanding human hairlessness may be nothing less than resolving the central mystery of human origins. Why, among millions of species, did only one evolve the capacity for cumulative culture, symbolic thought, and technological civilization? The evidence increasingly suggests that our naked skin was not merely an adaptation, but a pivotal evolutionary catalyst, one that set in motion the cascade of biological and behavioral changes that created humanity as we know it. As we follow this thread deeper, we approach not just an answer to why humans lost their fur, but potentially the key to understanding what made us human in the first place. Could our greatest intellectual achievement, understanding our own evolution, ultimately reveal that we became the species capable of such understanding precisely because we lost our fur? The possibility creates a perfect circle of causality. We can understand our origins because we lost our fur, and we lost our fur because of the unique pressures that created our capacity to understand. The mystery of human hairlessness thus becomes not just a curious evolutionary tangent, but potentially the central thread that, once pulled, unravels the entire tapestry of human uniqueness. Chapter 8. The three remaining hypotheses after examining the evidence. Contradictions and cultural perspectives surrounding human hairlessness. Three major theories emerge as the most scientifically viable explanations. Each offers unique insights while addressing different aspects of the evolutionary puzzle. First is the thermoregulation hypothesis, perhaps the most widely accepted explanation among evolutionary biologists. This theory proposes that humans lost their fur primarily to enhance cooling efficiency during sustained physical activity. According to this model, approximately 2 million years ago, our ancestors began adopting a new ecological niche as persistent hunters on the African savanna. This hunting strategy required sustained running during the hottest parts of the day, while most predators ambush or chase prey in short bursts. Humans evolved to pursue animals until they collapsed from heat exhaustion. This strategy exploited our superior cooling efficiency compared to fur-covered mammals. The evidence for this hypothesis is substantial. Humans possess an unparalleled density of ecryon sweat glands, between 2–5 million across the body, that function most effectively on bare skin. This evaporative cooling system allows humans to sustain moderate intensity exercise for hours, even in extreme heat, without experiencing dangerous core temperature elevations. A fur covering would significantly reduce this cooling efficiency. The fossil record supports the timeline. Homo erectus, emerging around 2 million years ago, displays anatomical adaptations consistent with distance running: longer legs, shorter toes, expanded attachment sites for stabilizing tendons, and larger semicircular canals for balance. These adaptations appear roughly concurrent with genetic evidence for hair loss, suggesting they evolved as a package of traits supporting a new locomotor and hunting strategy. Anthropological studies of contemporary hunter-gatherers document persistence hunting techniques still practiced in some regions. These hunts often occur during the hottest part of the day, when prey animals struggle to dissipate heat. The thermoregulation hypothesis elegantly connects multiple human adaptations into a coherent evolutionary narrative. Our hairlessness, sweating capacity, and endurance running abilities form a package of traits that collectively enabled a novel hunting strategy. The second viable explanation is the parasite reduction hypothesis. This theory suggests humans lost body hair primarily to reduce the habitat available for disease-carrying ectoparasites like lice, ticks, and fleas. Parasites represent a significant selective pressure for all mammals. They transmit diseases, consume blood and tissues, trigger immune responses, and generally reduce host fitness. Fur provides an ideal environment for these organisms to thrive. By reducing body hair, early humans may have gained significant health advantages through parasite reduction, particularly as they began living in larger, more densely populated social groups where disease transmission becomes more problematic. Supporting this hypothesis is the unique evolutionary history of human lice. Genetic analysis reveals that head lice and pubic lice are different species with different evolutionary trajectories, suggesting our bodies were already hairless enough to create distinct ecological niches. Body lice, which live primarily in clothing, appear to have evolved from head lice approximately 170,000 years ago, potentially marking when humans began wearing clothes regularly. This timeline aligns with the genetic evidence for hair loss beginning much earlier. Furthermore, many traditional human cultures practice body modification techniques that further reduce parasite habitat, from head shaving to plucking to various depilatory practices, suggesting ongoing selection pressure against body hair. The third compelling explanation is the aquatic foraging hypothesis, a moderate version of the more controversial aquatic ape theory. This hypothesis suggests humans lost body hair, partly to improve swimming and wading efficiency while exploiting coastal food resources. Unlike the full aquatic ape theory, this hypothesis doesn't claim humans went through a fully aquatic phase. Rather, it proposes that increased foraging in shallow coastal waters, rivers, and lake shores provided enough selective pressure to favor reduced body hair. Evidence for this hypothesis includes human physiological responses to water immersion, our instinctive breath-holding, mammalian diving reflex, and the fact that human infants can naturally hold their breath and paddle when placed in water. Archaeological evidence increasingly supports the importance of aquatic resources in human evolution. Shell middens, ancient refuse piles at early human sites demonstrate the exploitation of shellfish, while isotope analysis of fossils shows consumption of aquatic foods. Waterside environments offer exceptional nutritional resources, particularly omega-2, fatty acids crucial for brain development. The correlation between access to these nutrients and human encephalization provides another link in the aquatic foraging hypothesis. Notably, other mammals that spend significant time in water, from hippos to dolphins, have also evolved reduced body hair, suggesting convergent evolution for similar environmental pressures. Each of these three hypotheses addresses different aspects of the evidence. The thermoregulation hypothesis best explains our exceptional sweating capacity and the correlation with running adaptations. The parasite hypothesis best addresses why hairlessness would evolve even with its thermal disadvantages, particularly in social species. It also explains why we retained thick hair precisely where we couldn't easily groom ourselves, the head. The aquatic foraging hypothesis potentially explains several human adaptations that the others don't address. Our subcutaneous fat distribution, voluntary breath control, and our comfort in water relative to other primates. Rather than viewing these as competing explanations, recent interdisciplinary research suggests they may be complementary. Human hairlessness likely resulted from multiple selective pressures operating simultaneously or sequentially. This combined model proposes that initial selection for wading and swimming efficiency may have produced partial hair reduction. This reduction then created new possibilities for thermoregulation during endurance activities, leading to further hair loss. The resulting hairlessness would have reduced parasite load as a beneficial side effect, creating additional selective pressure to maintain the trait even when it posed thermal challenges. The synergistic effects of these multiple benefits could collectively outweigh the substantial costs of vulnerability to sun exposure, temperature fluctuations, and environmental abrasions that hairlessness entailed. This integrated model resolves many of the contradictions we've examined. It explains why hairlessness evolved before systematic hunting strategies, initial aquatic influences, why it affected both sexes' equally shared foraging activities, and why it persisted in cold climates' multiple benefits beyond thermoregulation. The model also explains why human hair loss follows a different pattern than aquatic mammals. We weren't fully aquatic, or rather part-time waders and swimmers who also needed efficient cooling for terrestrial activities. As we examine these hypotheses, we must remember that evolution rarely follows simple pathways. Complex traits like human hairlessness typically result from multiple selective pressures, historical contingencies, and unexpected evolutionary trade-offs. The story of human hairlessness may represent not a single adaptive narrative, but rather a unique evolutionary confluence, a perfect storm of selective pressures that created our peculiarly naked species. Chapter 9. Cutting-edge research and enduring paradoxes. Recent scientific advances have dramatically expanded our understanding of human hairlessness, while simultaneously revealing new paradoxes that deepen the mystery. Genomic analysis in particular has transformed our ability to trace the molecular history of hair-related genes. A breakthrough study published in 2018 identified a genetic enhancer region that regulates hair growth across mammals. When this region was experimentally deleted in mice, the animals developed significantly reduced body hair while maintaining head hair precisely the human pattern. This discovery suggests human hairlessness may have resulted not from the gradual mutation of many genes, but rather from changes to a single regulatory element that controls multiple hair growth genes simultaneously. Such a mechanism would explain how human hair loss could have occurred relatively rapidly in evolutionary time, rather than requiring millions of years of incremental change. Further genomic research has identified several genes in humans that show strong signatures of positive selection related to hair development. These include EDAR, which influences hair thickness and sweat gland density. An East Asian variant of EDOR increases sweat gland density while decreasing hair thickness, supporting the connection between these traits and suggesting thermoregulation has continued shaping human evolution even after our initial hair loss. Perhaps most intriguing is recent research on genetic ghosts, ancient DNA from fixed human relatives that lives on in our genome. Analysis shows modern humans carry DNA from both Neanderthals and Denisovans. These archaic human species likely shared our hairlessness based on genetic evidence, but they evolved in dramatically different environments. Neanderthals in cold Europe, modern humans in tropical Africa, suggesting hairlessness provided advantages beyond simple heat dissipation. New archaeological findings have pushed back the timeline for sophisticated technology. Evidence now suggests Neanderthals and early Homo sapiens were using complex adhesives, creating intricate tools, and possibly even weaving plant fibers as early as 90,000 years ago. These capabilities would have provided technological compensation for hairlessness much earlier than previously thought, potentially explaining how naked humans managed to colonize cold environments long before the development of tailored clothing. Climate reconstruction techniques have also advanced significantly. Detailed paleoclimate models now show that even tropical Africa experienced significant temperature fluctuations during the period when humans were losing their fur. These fluctuations would have created substantial thermal stress for hairless hominins, particularly during cold nights. Without technological compensation, our ancestors would have faced potentially fatal heat loss, deepening the paradox of why hairlessness evolved. Comparative genomics adds another layer to the mystery. While analyzing the genomes of mammals that independently evolved hair reduction elephants, rhinos, hippos, dolphins, and naked mole rats, researchers found no common genetic pathway. This suggests convergent evolution, different genetic roots leading to similar physical traits. Unlike eyes or wings, which tend to evolve through similar genetic pathways across species, hair loss appears to follow unique genetic trajectories in different lineages. This genomic diversity makes human hairlessness even more puzzling. Why did our lineage evolve this trait through particular genetic changes? And what selective pressures were powerful enough to drive such a significant morphological transformation? The energetic paradox of hairlessness has been quantified through new metabolic research. Studies measuring heat loss in humans under various conditions reveal that hairlessness increases caloric requirements by 5 to 10% in moderate temperatures. For early humans with limited food resources, this represents a substantial metabolic penalty, one that would need to be offset by significant adaptive advantages to be favored by natural selection. Recent neurological research reveals another fascinating connection. The brain regions that expanded most dramatically during human evolution overlap significantly with those involved in thermoregulation and body temperature monitoring. This suggests the possibility that enhanced temperature regulation capabilities co-evolved with our expanding brain, both responding to and enabling the increased metabolic demands of our extraordinary neural tissue. Biomechanical studies using 3D models and computational fluid dynamics have quantified the cooling advantage of hairlessness during running. These models show that a sweating, hairless human can dissipate up to 3 to 5 times more heat than a comparable furred mammal during sustained exercise. This dramatic advantage helps explain how humans can maintain activity levels that would cause fatal hyperthermia in most mammals of similar size. But it still doesn't resolve why we lost fur before evidence of systematic persistence hunting appears in the archaeological record. The parasite hypothesis has gained support from genomic studies of human pathogens. DNA analysis of lice, mites, and other human-specific ectoparasites reveals they diverged from the parasites of other primates approximately 3 to 5 million years ago. This timeline suggests human ancestors were already experiencing unique parasite pressures before significant hair loss began, potentially creating the initial selective pressure that started our evolutionary disrobing. Endocrinological research adds another dimension to the mystery. Human skin has been shown to synthesize numerous hormones and signaling molecules when exposed to sunlight, compounds that influence everything, from immune function to mood regulation. These photochemical reactions require direct skin exposure to function efficiently. Could the benefits of these sun-activated compounds have contributed to selection for reduced body hair? The evidence remains preliminary but intriguing. Paleoanthropologic findings continue to refine our understanding of human evolutionary history. Recent discoveries suggest that multiple hominin species coexisted for hundreds of thousands of years, often in the same regions. This creates a competitive dimension to the hairlessness question. If one hominin lineage gained substantial advantages from reducing body hair, it could have created selective pressure for competing lineages to develop similar adaptations. The molecular clock technique for dating genetic changes has been refined through advanced statistical methods. Updated analyses suggest the genetic changes associated with human hair reduction may have begun earlier than previously thought, perhaps 3 to 4 million years ago. This extended timeline would better align with archaeological evidence for technological development, but creates new questions about which hominin species first began the hair reduction process. Comparative behavioral studies with great apes provide another perspective. Unlike humans, chimpanzees and gorillas reduce their activity during the hottest parts of the day, seeking shade and resting during peak heat hours. Humans' ability to remain active throughout the day represents a significant ecological advantage, allowing exploitation of resources and hunting opportunities unavailable to heat-limited competitors. Hairlessness may have been crucial to this chronological niche expansion. The geographic paradox of hairlessness has been quantified through climatic envelope modeling. These models demonstrate that hairless humans without clothing would be thermally stressed in approximately 80% of the environments our species currently inhabits. This extraordinary range of habitation, despite our physiological limitations, highlights the unique role of cultural adaptation in human evolution. Our technological solutions effectively compensated for our biological vulnerability. Recently discovered fossil evidence suggests controlled use of fire may date back 1.5 million years, considerably earlier than previously confirmed. If accurate, this would significantly narrow the gap between hair loss and technological compensation. The timing remains controversial, but increasingly sophisticated archaeological techniques are finding evidence of fire use through chemical and microscopic analysis of sediments and fossils where conventional charcoal evidence has long since disappeared. New anthropological research on contemporary hunter-gatherer groups reveals sophisticated behavioral adaptations for temperature regulation without technology. These include strategic use of shade and water, timing of activities, and social thermoregulation through group huddling. These behavioral adaptations may represent very ancient strategies that helped early hairless humans survive before the development of reliable clothing and shelter, potentially resolving part of the chronological paradox. Despite these advances, fundamental questions remain. The most persistent paradox is still the timing. Genetic evidence for hair reduction predates archaeological evidence for systematic hunting and controlled fire use by hundreds of thousands of years. This chronological gap continues to challenge single-factor explanations for human hairlessness. Whatever drove our ancestors to shed their protective fur must have provided immediate benefits, not advantages realized only millennia later. As we integrate these diverse research threads, one conclusion becomes increasingly clear. Human hairlessness was not simply an adaptation to a single environmental pressure, but rather a pivotal evolutionary node connecting multiple adaptive pathways. Our naked skin represents not just a curious biological anomaly, but potentially a key inflection point in human evolution, one that opened new ecological opportunities while simultaneously necessitating unprecedented cultural adaptations. Chapter 10: The Multivariate Cascade Theory. Throughout this exploration, we've examined competing hypotheses, contradictions, and cutting-edge research surrounding human hairlessness. Now, we arrive at what the evidence increasingly suggests is the most compelling explanation, what scientists call the multivariate cascade theory. This theory proposes that human hairlessness resulted not from a single adaptive pressure, but from a sequence of interconnected evolutionary changes, each creating new possibilities while imposing new constraints that shaped subsequent adaptations. Unlike simpler explanations that focus on one factor, thermoregulation, parasites, or aquatic activity, the cascade theory recognizes that evolution rarely follows linear pathways. Instead, traits emerge through complex interactions between biology, behavior, and environment. The cascade appears to have begun approximately 4 million years ago, when climate change transformed much of East Africa from forest to savanna. Our Australopithecine ancestors, previously adapted to arboreal environments, faced new selective pressures in this open landscape. Fossil evidence shows these early hominins were experimenting with bipedal locomotion, standing upright to see over tall grasses, reach previously inaccessible foods, and move efficiently between scattered resources in the savanna environment. This postural change created the first cascade effect. Bipedalism altered how our ancestors' bodies interacted with solar radiation, significantly increasing sun exposure to the torso and shoulders while reducing exposure to the face and front of the body. Computational models demonstrate that this postural change would create strong selection pressure for regional changes in hair, density, and skin. Pigmentation, precisely the mosaic pattern we observe in humans today. Simultaneously, these early bipedal hominins were expanding their dietary range. Isotope analysis of Australopithecine fossils shows increasing consumption of resources from open environments, including plants, insects, and small animals. Acquiring these resources often required wading into shallow waters, lakes, rivers, and seasonally flooded areas where protein-rich foods like shellfish, aquatic plants, and stranded fish could be collected with minimal technology. These wading behaviors would have created selective pressure for hair reduction on the lower limbs, as observed in other wading mammals and birds. Wet fur provides poor insulation and significantly increases energetic costs of movement through water resistance. Evidence for this stage comes from comparative anatomy. Human legs are significantly less hairy than our arms, a pattern consistent with partial piers. Woo-woo, partial adaptation to regular wading rather than full aquatic immersion. Around 2.5 million years ago, a third factor entered the cascade: tool use. The earliest stone tools appear in the archaeological record at this time, indicating our ancestors were developing new ways to access high-quality foods. The metabolic benefits of these tools were substantial. Stone implements allowed extraction of calorie-dense bone marrow, more efficient butchering of scavenged carcasses, and processing of fibrous plants into digestible foods. This dietary shift increased protein and fat consumption, providing the energetic resources needed to support larger brains and creating new selective pressures for enhanced cognitive abilities. Brain tissue is metabolically expensive, consuming approximately 20 times more energy by weight than muscle. It also generates significant heat during operation, creating thermal regulation challenges for a species evolving larger neural capacity. The combination of increasing brain size, regular wading behaviors, and bipedal posture created powerful selection for enhanced cooling capacity, particularly for the head and upper body, where critical neural tissue was concentrated. This stage of the cascade favored individuals with reduced hair on the scalp and torso, allowing more efficient heat dissipation through radiation and sweating. The fossil record shows brain expansion accelerating approximately 2 million years ago. Genetic evidence confirms selection for hair thinning and eccrine gland development intensified during this period. Mutations in the adder and other hair-related genes show signatures of positive selection dating to approximately 2 to 2.5 million years ago. With partial hair reduction already underway, new behavioral possibilities emerged. The improved cooling capacity allowed longer periods of activity during daylight hours, creating opportunities for novel foraging and hunting strategies. Archaeological evidence from this period shows increasing evidence of carnivory. Cut marks on animal bones become more common, and stable isotope analysis of hominin fossils indicates higher trophic level feeding, suggesting regular meat consumption. Unlike most predators, which hunt primarily during dawn, dusk, or night, early humans could remain active during the hottest parts of the day thanks to their enhanced cooling system. This created a unique hunting opportunity: persistence hunting. By pursuing prey during peak heat, humans could exploit their superior thermoregulation to exhaust animals unable to cool effectively while running. The success of this strategy created further selection for enhanced cooling, favoring individuals with even less body hair and more efficient sweating systems. The evolutionary feedback loop intensified. Simultaneously, increasing social complexity created new selective pressures. As early humans formed larger groups with more sophisticated cooperation, parasite loads became a greater threat. Reduced body hair provided significant advantage in this context, making ectoparasites more visible for manual removal during grooming and reducing their available habitat. Studies of modern primates confirm that grooming efficiency correlates directly with hair density. The intersection of these selective pressures, thermoregulation for both brain cooling and endurance activity, parasite reduction, and aquatic foraging efficiency, created a powerful evolutionary vector toward hairlessness. By approximately 1.5 million years ago, evidence suggests Homo erectus was substantially hairless, committed to this evolutionary pathway despite the accompanying vulnerabilities to sun exposure, abrasion, and cold stress. The final stage of the cascade involved technological and cultural compensation for these vulnerabilities. The timing remains controversial, but increasing evidence suggests controlled use of fire dates to at least 1.5 million years ago. Fire provided critical thermal protection for hairless hominins, allowing survival during cold nights and expansion into cooler environments. It also enabled cooking, which significantly increased the digestibility and caloric availability of foods. This technological adaptation completed the cascade, transforming a potential evolutionary liability into a decisive advantage through cultural rather than biological adaptation. The multivariate cascade theory resolves the major paradoxes we've encountered. It explains the unusual timing of hair loss relative to technological developments by recognizing that partial hair reduction began earlier and for different reasons than traditionally assumed. It accounts for the geographic distribution of human populations by acknowledging the crucial role of fire and other cultural adaptations in compensating for hairlessness in cold environments. It explains why humans lost fur while other savanna mammals retained theirs, because our unique combination of bipedalism, large brains, social complexity, and waiting behaviors created selective pressures no other species experienced. Most importantly, the cascade theory reveals human hairlessness not as an isolated trait, but as a pivotal adaptation that enabled many distinctively human characteristics, from our large brains to our extraordinary endurance to our unique social structures. Our nakedness, viewed through this lens, represents not an evolutionary curiosity, but a fundamental turning point, the moment when our lineage began shifting from purely biological adaptation to the technocultural adaptation that defines humanity. This perspective transforms our understanding of what it means to be human. We are not simply naked apes, but rather a species whose biological vulnerability became the catalyst for unprecedented cultural and technological development. Our hairlessness thus stands as both our greatest vulnerability and ultimately our greatest strength, the evolutionary gamble that triggered the cascade of adaptations that made us human. We've journeyed through time, evidence, and competing theories to unravel one of evolution's most persistent mysteries. The story that emerges is not a simple narrative of adaptation to a single pressure, but rather a complex interplay of factors unique to our lineage. Human hairlessness represents an evolutionary inflection point, the moment when our ancestors committed to a path that would eventually define humanity. Our naked skin became both our vulnerability and our possibility. The multivariate cascade that began with postural changes, incorporated aquatic foraging, accelerated with brain expansion, and culminated in technological compensation created a species unlike any other on Earth. In losing our fur, we gained not just improved thermoregulation, but the adaptive pressure that drove us toward unprecedented social cooperation, technological innovation, and environmental flexibility. This understanding transforms how we see ourselves. Our naked bodies are not flawed designs requiring constant covering and modification, but rather sophisticated adaptations optimized for our unique ecological niche. The cultural expressions we've developed around our hairlessness, from clothing to body decoration to our complex feelings about nudity, reflect the ongoing dialogue between our biology and our technology. The paradox of human nakedness ultimately reflects the central paradox of humanity itself. Our greatest biological vulnerability became the catalyst for our greatest strength, cultural adaptation. As we continue to modify our environments through technology, we would do well to remember this lesson from our evolutionary past. Our species thrived not by achieving perfect biological adaptation, but by turning vulnerability into opportunity through innovation. Perhaps this is the deepest significance of our hairless condition, a constant reminder that humanity's essence lies not in biological perfection, but in our extraordinary capacity to transcend our limitations through creativity, cooperation, and cultural transformation. In the naked ape, we find not just an evolutionary curiosity, but a mirror reflecting what makes us uniquely human. If you've enjoyed this exploration of our origins, subscribe for more journeys through the mysteries that make us who we are. Creatures balanced eternally between nature and culture, vulnerability and possibility.